These are common sense steps, like canceling the unspent stimulus funds and the TARP bailouts that put the brakes on Washington's out-of-control spending spree. Republicans have also proposed establishing strict budget caps to limit federal spending on an annual basis. If we reduce spending from current levels and impose a hard cap on future growth, we can save taxpayers more than $340 billion, and we can make sure that this is the last Washington spending spree of its kind. To restore balance between the federal government and the public sector, Republicans have called for freezing both government pay and government hiring. Instead of growing big government, let's focus on growing small businesses around our country. Last month, as part of our America Speaking Out project, Republican lawmakers met with some of America's employer community to hear their concerns and talk about ways to end this economic uncertainty. One of the ideas that was mentioned was a freeze on new job-killing regulations, just something Washington could do to give the private sector a little breathing room. Right now, Republicans are fighting for common-sense legislation offered by Congressman Jeff Davis of Kentucky that will require congressional approval of any new rule that imposes a cost of more than $100 million on our nation's economy. I think this initiative would serve as a much-needed restraining order against unelected busybodies and bureaucrats who overstep their boundaries and make it harder to create jobs. President Reagan once said that there ought to be a law against saying that there ought to be a law. I couldn't agree more. It's not enough, however, to break the current uncertainty and rein in big government and hope the pendulum swings the other way. Once businesses get up off the sidelines, we need to keep them in the game. And one idea that Ways and Means ranking Republican Dave Camp of Michigan proposed as part of our stimulus plan was to allow small businesses with fewer than 500 employees to take a tax deduction equal to 20% of their income. This would free up extra capital and allow for new investment and new hiring, and was a better solution when we offered it last year, and frankly, it continues to be what we think is a better solution. We've also recently heard a lot of talk in Washington about the manufacturing sector, but no action. Congress is yet to act on the pending trade agreements with Colombia, Panama, and South Korea. These agreements would level the playing field for American workers, farmers, and businesses, and pave the way for creating hundreds of thousands of new jobs right here at home. Passing these free trade agreements was a critical plank in our jobs plan that House Republican Whip Eric Cantor and I presented to the President last December. Congress should approve these free trade agreements immediately. The best case I can make for these solutions is that they work, and some of them are working right now. Last year, House Republicans launched a state solutions project, bring Republican governors and legislators together to fight big government policies and promote better solutions to the everyday challenges that the American people deal with. Now let's look at what two Republican governors who've been in office only a matter of months have been able to accomplish. In Virginia, Governor Bob McDonnell entered office facing an unprecedented $4.2 billion deficit. His predecessor proposed closing the shortfall by imposing the largest tax increase in the state's history. Governor McDonnell refused to balance his state's budget by making it harder for Virginia families and business owners to balance their own budgets. In New Jersey, Governor Chris Christie entered office facing an $11 billion budget deficit left behind by his predecessor. And it was all gimmicked up by some new property tax for the homeowners in New Jersey. Both governors forged bipartisan cooperation, set priorities, cut spending, closed their shortfalls, and did so without raising taxes. But unless Washington provides leadership and puts in place policies that promote lasting private sector job growth, our engine of economic growth, the states, will continue to face difficult choices year after year. For 20 years now, I've watched leaders in both parties look at the big issues, the tough issues, and then I watch them look away. Now we're just out of time. We've run out of road to kick the bucket down. It's time to put grown-ups in charge. It's time for people willing to accept responsibility, and it's time to do what we say that we're going to do. These are the values that I learned growing up with my 11 brothers and sisters, the values that I passed on to my daughters. And I've also told my girls how I was raised, to never accept the next best thing for myself or my country. This is the time. No more uncertainty, no more muddled messages. America's strength is in her people, hardworking, industrious, always pioneering, always innovating. So we will confront these hard truths together, and we will tackle these challenges together. I want to thank you again for the opportunity of being here today, and I look forward to your questions.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to a special forum featuring House Minority Leader John Boehner, representative from Ohio's 8th Congressional District. We're going to return to our speaker momentarily, but first we have a couple of matters to remind you of, and please be formulating your questions for the time when we return. Please make them brief and to the point. We remind you that members and guests alike are welcome to submit questions today. And as Gary Messelman said at the beginning, we hope all of you who are not members will consider joining and help support the nearly 100 years of the City Club of Cleveland. This Friday, on August 27, Admiral Mike Mullen, who is chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, will address the City Club. And a week from this Friday, on September 3rd, the City Club will welcome Terry Stewart, who is president and CEO of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And there are other programs coming up in the future that are listed in the programs at your table. Today we're pleased to welcome guests at tables hosted by Baker Hostetler, the Greater Cleveland Partnership, Jones Day, KeyBank, Porter Wright, and University Hospitals. And we thank all of those organizations for supporting us today. Now we'll return to our speaker for our traditional City Club questions and answer period. As I said, the guests are welcome to submit questions. Holding the microphone today is Carrie Miller in the back there. And I would like to remind you that we're asking for brief questions, no speeches, please. First question.
The president has formed a 18-member commission to make proposals on cutting the deficit. The report will come out after the election. Do you have any hope that they will come out with some meaningful reforms? Or is this just a Trojan horse for raising taxes?
I don't think any of us knows what the outcome will be. I'm hopeful. After having talked with former Senator Alan Simpson and Erskine Bowles, the two people who are chairing this commission, I'm hopeful that they will take a look at the long-term challenges our country faces. You know, there are 18 members of this commission. It takes 14 of them to make a recommendation. Senator McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, and myself worked together to put 6 serious members on this commission in the hope that they'll be able to come forward with recommendations. But I hope that there is ample time, if there are recommendations, for the American people to have a clear view of what it is that's being recommended, and they ought to be entitled to have time to read it, debate it, and discuss it before Congress begins to put it on the table. There are some on the commission that during their meetings have continued to advocate for higher taxes. And one in particular that we continue to hear out of some of the more liberal members of the commission is the idea that we ought to have a value-added tax, a national sales tax, on top of all the other taxes that we have. I can tell you that I would not support that, nor would I believe any of my Republican colleagues in the House or Senate.